Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to Shouting into the Void. It's a very grey and dull afternoon here in our universe, which coincidentally kind of fits in with the weather in this episode. Um, this is the show where we go through all of Doctor Who, all of new Doctor Who,
All of Doctor Who.
Eventually, it will be all of Doctor Who.
You've committed to it now.
I mean, I'm up for it. It's just the DVDs are very expensive, and
we start from an unearthly child next week.
Oh, could you imagine? That would be horrible. I don't think I could sit through it.
Wow.
I like bits of it, but it goes.
The first episode's great. The rest of it's awful.
Yeah, like all classic serials, they go on a bit too long.
Blasphemy. I mean,
I'm
not entirely wrong a lot of the time, but
but yes, this is the revived Doctor Who rather than all of Doctor Who.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yes, so it started in 2005. We're now on series 3. We've gone through the Rose, we've gone through Christopher Eccleston, and now we're with David Tennant and Freema Agyeman in Human Nature, episode 8. This is the first part of a two-parter. We're rapidly approaching the series finale. It's literally 3-4 episodes left, so not much.
Mm-hmm.
But we've got this behemoth of a two-parter coming up next. I feel. So let's try and figure out how to phrase this. The Doctor isn't the Doctor. He is a human teacher named John Smith, who's working at he's not Victorian. I don't know what era it is. Edwardian? I don't know.
A school in 1930.
yeah. He's a private school, so and it's an all boys school as well. But he's human, completely human, just teaching history, I guess. I don't know. Martha is there as herself, trying to blend in, but she's just working as a maid. Why are they there? Well, luckily you get told pretty quick. They're there because they're trying to hide from some aliens that can sense the Doctor or smell him or track him. So they basically try to hide from them until they die. And obviously everything happens at once as soon as the episode starts, because we're not going to get dropped into before the stuff happens. So what did you think of it?
I very much enjoyed it. It was nice to get to a very good episode again.
Yeah.
I think this is probably my favorite of series 3 so far.
Mm-hmm.
Just about. I did really like Smith and Jones, but I also enjoyed this one. I do feel like I very much need part 2 to really appreciate this one.
Yeah,
because I feel like a lot of this one was just establishing what's going on here, and the first 10 minutes was just John Smith walking through corridors talking about the Battle of Waterloo.
Yeah.
So I think, it's going to really excel when you engage it as a whole, but we have to talk about just the first part. But yeah, we had some really interesting ideas in there. I think plot-wise, it's one of the more interesting ones we've had in a while. It was cool to see Martha kind of get a lot of spotlight in this one, unfortunately for her. I don't think she had the best of times. But yeah, cool villains, I feel like, as well. I like the setting, and a very, very interesting first part that I think does a great job at setting up some stakes, setting up some interesting ideas, and definitely one of the highlights of the series so far for me.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think overall I enjoyed this a lot, and I think next week is probably the better of the two. Obviously we could feel differently when we come around to it. But that doesn't mean that the first part isn't pretty good anyway. To be fair, I think it's better than pretty good. It's definitely probably the best one we've had so far this series. The supporting cast, as we've mentioned a number of times in this episode, is also pretty good, especially sort of for a couple of them, the amount of times they have to sort of switch between two different personalities. I guess except for Martha, who I guess has the one personality throughout the episode. I have a couple of concerns. I think on Martha's part, which we'll come on to, but and I think that's more maybe from a writing standpoint than necessarily an acting standpoint. But yeah, overall really good. I like the setup and the stakes it establishes. I kind of like that we don't really know what we're dealing with. And also that the sack men are a lot creepier than I remember them being. Especially the one that stops Jenny and is like red in his eyes and mouth. And I was like, why is his eyes and mouth red?
You didn't want to know.
And I was like, oh, okay. And yeah, and the set design, we'll come on to the more specifics, but I just think overall this was a very well made episode, very well acted. And it's the start of what will hopefully be a pretty good story, probably one of the best of at least series 3.
Even if it breaks canon.
Yes, sure, even if it does.
Because they say it's set in 2007 when it's supposed to take place a
year
later.
No! Oh,
canon! I can't believe Doctor Who has broken canon. It never does this ever.
Unbelievable. I mean, to be fair, I hate that it did that year gap. I just wish they set like the start in like 2004 and then did the rest in 2005. That would just make much more sense. But anyway, I don't think it really matters too much because they never really, other than maybe this one time, they never really establish what the time is, although it could. We'll see what happens in series at the end of series 3 because they might say, "Oh, it's the 2008 election." You're like, wrong.
You lied.
But we'll see. Yes, as always, we do 3 positives and 3 negatives. I have quite a few positives this week, probably more than the established 3. And I did struggle, I think, for the negatives, but we'll come on to them.
Yeah, I did have to really think for 2 of them, I must say.
Yeah. So we'll start with you this week. What is your top best bit?
Well, I kind of just said the performances of all the family in general, but I think the real highlight for me was Harry Lloyd as Baines / Son of Mine.
He's my top one as well.
Yeah, he is one of those actors that you just can't stop watching. I feel everything I've seen in him, he's been great. Game of Thrones, Robin Hood in this, like the big ones. Yeah, he's just so good. Such a dick when he's just Baines. Like classic pompous boy or whatever. But then once he gets taken over and stuff, he's just so creepy. I think that's elevated by, how he's shot and everything, like the close-ups and stuff. But yeah, he doesn't care that he actually looks ridiculous. If you're just like watching this, like as a cameraman or whatever, you're like, oh my God, this guy is like hamming it up, but that really, really works. He just has this commanding presence. I feel like it's an interesting concept for Villain anyway, but I think he really does sell that change. Even though he wasn't particularly nice before he was like taken over or whatever, but you can still see that clear difference. And just the way he says some of his lines, and he gives like different speech patterns to it, and a very kind of commanding tour de force, I would say, and like one of the strongest kind of guest villain performances we've definitely had so far, I would say. He's just so good, and I'm almost sad that someone so good is only in like 1-2 part, and that's kind of all they can do with him. But also, I couldn't really imagine anyone else playing that part and being as memorable. So he was fantastic.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think the main thing is the fact that he can play this naive child in one scene who's
say hello.
Yeah, exactly. He's like, oh, what's going on, kind of thing, to then being this commanding villainous presence as soon as he comes back in through that window. And then that is even more established by the end when he's literally dominating that whole village hall and being like, can everybody shut the fuck up? I'm going to kill you. I've already killed 3 people. Don't make me kill a 4th.
Yeah, that made me laugh when they walked in, and the father of mine was like, I want silence. Everyone was silent, and he said, I said silence. You're already quiet, buddy.
And I just think he's definitely the standout of the family. Although I think a couple of them get a bit more chance to shine next week. He's definitely the son. You can tell even though he's the son, you can tell he's like the leader of the group. Which is a strange one, but just sort of the close-ups, and he could be so. In another episode, he could have played this role completely the wrong way, and it be completely over the top and not villainous and not creepy. But it's just something about this one just works very well. and you
Yeah.
feel that menacing threat from him. Even if it is slightly over the top with the big sniff every 5 minutes. That can be a bit much, but it also, he makes it work, and it doesn't look too campy and cheesy when he does it. And how his friends can't tell he's a completely different person, I don't know. I mean, it'd be pretty odd, but hey, I guess that's also supposed to showcase how sort of shallow some of the students are. The fact that they don't notice when one of their friends is completely turned.
And how terrible he was before. The fact that they don't really see much of a difference. I think Martha should have caught on to Jenny a lot sooner than she did, I would say. But with Baines, I think it is.
I think with Martha and Jenny, I think she knows, she sort of clocks something's wrong, and then she tests the waters, and then she goes for it, doesn't she?
Which I think it's more so good. The fact that Mother of Mine's just thick and shouldn't have been so obvious.
I was like, come on, you know what they eat. Don't be an idiot. They're not putting that in. They're not putting that in the teapot. Let's behave.
Tell me, Martha.
Yeah.
Tell me your secrets.
But yes, and we get a bit more of Father of Mine and Daughter of Mine later on.
Doctor,
found your
TARDIS.
So
such a good accent.
We'll come on to that. And I just think overall the family are pretty good, but Baines especially is the highlight of the ensemble. So then, what is your second point?
My second one is Martha, in fact.
Interesting.
Yes, I feel like it was good to finally see her hold her own and have to kind of run the ship, if you will. I think that's good development after 42, the previous episode, because she just kind of had to try and save the Doctor on her own when she was kind of left like, oh dear, just me. So I think this is a nice natural progression from that. The fact that I think she has to carry a lot of the emotional weight of the story, trying to kind of navigate, the fact that this guy that she loves is gone, falls in love with someone else as a human. They're being hunted down, suddenly aware that they've been found, and it's all a bit of a mess. I wouldn't want to be in her shoes. And on top of that, you have people being racist to her day in, day out, which I'm sure is not particularly easy for her to have to deal with on top of everything else. And she still has to maintain composure, do her best with that. And I don't think I wouldn't have done very well. I think if I was in her shoes, I would have freaked out a long time ago. So I like that it's just a nice showcase of her strength. I feel like, I think also more, I think Freema is just so good. I think, she gets a lot more in like the finale, I think, in terms of like emotional stuff to work with and to really, really shine. But I think this is kind of a nice prelude to that, where she has to carry kind of the events of the finale as well. It's just showing that she does have the chops. I really liked her friendship with Jenny as well. I thought that was quite wholesome until Jenny gets possessed, but that's fine. But yeah, I think it's just such an interesting idea. I think it's also the idea is why she's in my positives, to put a companion in a position like that. I think is something we can't really do again, haven't really done before. It's a really neat thing to see that it's still very much John Smith's episode, I'd say, but she's kind of the driving force behind it. And I think it's a great showcase of what she's capable of as kind of a continuation of the last one and setting up for her role in the finale. So I very much enjoyed her.
Fair enough. I can agree with most of that. I do have some concerns about the characterization, which we'll come on to. But yeah, I can definitely agree that it's a unique angle to put a companion in. I can't criticize Freema's performance. I think it covers the range of emotions pretty well. I did think, why doesn't she just stay in the TARDIS? There's no reason why she really needs to go with the Doctor, if not just to open the fob watch, and then in that case just sit in the TARDIS with the watch, wait till they're died, and then run out and go ooh at him when he's in the square. That might have been the best way forward, but that's just me being picky.
That'd have been a very boring two-parter.
She's just sat there the whole time. But yeah, I do agree that she's definitely given a lot to do, and it does showcase how independent she can be. If she does kind of rely on that recording of the Doctor a little bit to sort of go back to. It's kind of like when you break up with someone and you're like, just keep rereading messages or something because you're still like infatuated with them, but they've moved on. That's what I get from this.
Okay.
which we'll come on to later on.
Oh.
But yeah, I do agree that with your positive points, I do also agree with those. But unfortunately, something lets it down. My sort of second positive, we've already mentioned the family, but the rest of the supporting cast. I've already forgotten her name. Joan.
Give?
Joan. I
Yeah.
can't remember the actress's name. But she is great, I think.
Yeah. I nearly put her in place of Martha. So she was really good.
Yeah, she's great. I think the other boys that are friends with Baines, I can't remember is it Hutchinson?
Hutchinson, yeah.
He's pretty cool, although a bit of a prick. The head teacher's also a decent character. I think all of them get a little bit more play next week, but in this week they're good, like set up characters. You know, there's something there that they can work with at least. And then obviously Latimer's the standout with the boy that never ages, who was also in Game of Thrones. So it's a Game of Thrones fest in this episode.
Yes, indeed.
And yeah, I think Latimer especially, he's obviously not necessarily the audience's way into this, but he allows the audience to see the other side of the story, what's going on. And the fact that he's a little bit weird, he's obviously the bully. It's not really established whether or at least in this one, it's not established whether his weird, freaky psychic powers are a result of the watch or just something that he has naturally. I think that might get explored.
I'll get onto that.
Yeah, I think that might get explored a little bit next week. But I think, again, another character there that's well acted and is set up well for next week, like a lot of the characters have been, because obviously it's a part one. But yeah, I think the most of the supporting cast, even like sort of the background characters, you know, it feels like they just filmed during a school day, although a fancy dress school day, a school day nonetheless. And it just works. I think all around, it really sells the setting with everyone in this. There's not a weak link, at least, that I could spot. Maybe Father of Mine is a bit over the top, but other than that, I think everything else is solid. So what is your final positive?
The Scarecrows.
Interesting.
Straw Boys.
Yeah.
Straw Boys. More so just because they're so creepy. And I've always really liked that particular design for them. I remember asking for a lot of action figures of the Scarecrows because I wanted loads of them.
Yeah.
And I got them because they like painted the tie a different color so they could sell more of them. So there's like 4 different ones. But yeah, I just think, you know, in terms of like a minion for like the main threat, I think this is one of the more interesting ones, and it really fits well, I think, visually with the rest of the story. Such a cool design. The physicality of them, I think, was kind of explored really well. Just a super well realized kind of cannon fodder, quite literally, in the next episode. Because somehow they die from bullet wounds. But
but they don't. But they do. But they don't.
They don't. But they do. We needed to get rid of them from the episode. But yeah, the way that, again, like with the family, I think the way they're shot is very well done. When they do like the little head tilts and the turns to look at the camera. Very horrible. But really cool. I think it's one of the more memorable creatures I think we've had this series. So they're definitely a big standout for me. And again, something you haven't necessarily seen that much of in Doctor Who to make scarecrows creepy. It's crazy that they hadn't thought of doing that before. But yeah, it was a really cool kind of creature, especially because it was Russell's idea to put them in. They weren't going to be in it, so they needed a classic monster to sell posters and figures, I guess. But I actually think, you know, even though that was the motivation for including them, they do play a nice role in things, and I think they fit in quite well. They don't feel kind of forced. I'm looking at you, pig slaves. But yeah, I found them really creepy, so I wanted to give them a shout out. Good old Straw Boys. Yeah,
that's fair enough. They're just on. They're not in my top 3 positives, but they are on my positive list. They're effectively a better version of the pig people. Literally. I like the design because it's not a scarecrow, but you can recognize it as a scarecrow. Like, you wouldn't see that scarecrow out in the field now. but
No.
it's obviously a scarecrow, and that's obviously one of Russell's specialities, is making something so normal be so creepy and menacing. Now, every time you drive past a field with a scarecrow in it, you're like, oh, no, thank you. Because who knows, no one's safe. You could be on your bike, you could be just enjoying your balloon, you could be dead. So no one's safe.
Oh.
Except when it's convenient for the Doctor to just fix it and then just leave, because guess they didn't need them.
Nope.
But yeah, I do agree that the scarecrows are probably are a highlight, and they're a well-designed henchman is probably the best way to put it. Which is good. I mean, they're probably a one-off. I highly doubt we'll ever see them again, but you never know.
No.
My sort of final positive is same as last week. David Tennant. Oh, hey,
what?
2 weeks in a row. Yeah, mainly this one because again he sells the human John Smith very well. You come to expect the Doctor, and you see the Doctor in this, and he sells that as well. And it's just it showcases the different sides of his performance, and we'll see that more next week in more obvious ways.
He has a lot of experience being a human, so I think
he really draws on it. But yeah, I just think that he is charismatic and naive, I think, as this human, which is something that you don't see with the Doctor, which is something unique that he obviously didn't have to worry about before in his performance.
If he wasn't likable, this episode would have fallen completely flat. But I think he finds the correct balance for it.
That's it, because there are definitely moments, and you could definitely not like him with sort of how he treats Martha and how he just casually says, "Yeah, all right, kids, go and beat up Latimer because he's not doing very well."
Take him away.
Yeah. So there, and the fact that
after he just had a scene with him being like, "You're a smart kid, Tim. You just need to
get him
out there a bit more. Now beat him, kick his brain.
He's not good enough. Get him." But yeah, I just think it's a standout performance, as I've sort of come to expect. And if your lead man isn't performing very well, obviously it's not going to be a good episode. No. But luckily he does, and he is definitely one of the highlights for me. In terms of sort of other things, I mentioned the setting, which I really like, just because you feel like you're there. You feel like you're transported back to 1913 with the set design, the little courtyard with the milk jugs and the pram and whatever, and the piano falling, which is very exaggerated, but I do quite like it. And then even just the school itself. I also thought that the writing in this one was pretty good. A number of lines that I pointed out, where he's obviously like, "Oh, simply human" at the start, even though he's not. I thought that was quite nice. There was one where where is it? A couple. There's a girl in every fireplace, which is what Joan says to him at one point. I was like, that reference. That's a nice one. And then when Latimer's listening to the watch, like, "Keep me safe from the false and empty man," just as I think Baines comes along. So there's when he's talking with Latimer, he's like, "Oh, you're clever, but you seem to be hiding it." And it's like, no man should hide. I'm like, it's funny because you're doing that. So I do that. I mean, it's probably quite basic stuff, and people that know writing more than I do are probably like, "Oh yeah, that's just so easy." But I appreciated how sort of clever the writing was trying to be, especially in comparison to the past couple of weeks where it was pretty much your basic stuff.
And the guy who wrote this two-parter wrote Father's Day as well. So for me, he has a very good track record. Yeah, that's fair enough. I also thought there was a couple of sort of pop culture references. Whether it was, I think, War of the Worlds, there's a James Bond reference. I can't remember which one it was, but he says he's someone's like Baines, Jeremy Baines, like, I get that. The balloon with the girl being got is obviously a sort of knock to it, or at least I assumed it would be. I've got a fun fact about the balloon.
Oh, interesting. We'll come on to that then later on. And then obviously the green falling star, as far as I'm aware, is a reference, or could be construed as a reference to War of the Worlds. When obviously that's the color of the Martians falling to Earth, which is obviously what happens in this. It's around the same time as well, I think, early 1900s. I think War of the Worlds came out. It might be late 1800s. So yeah, I appreciated all those, even if they weren't intentional. I still thought they were. So do you have any other positive points that you wanted to point out?
I mentioned already, like the bits of direction. I thought like the close up of the family and how that was all shot, I thought was very good. Some of the lighting when they like shine the green on them, I think that's also quite effective. It kind of splits up some of those shots. And yeah, a lot of the little references to like past stories and stuff, be it, you know, all the drawings in the journal and like the girl in the fireplace references, stuff like that. I quite liked how they lit them throughout, but it didn't feel like, haha, you know, this is just the story. If we mention all these other ones, pay attention to it, because the story itself is good in its own right. So yeah, there's some extra little bits. Yeah,
don't forget Rose. Don't forget she's there. Big picture of her.
How can we forget Rose?
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. And I completely agree with the way it's shot. I think it is a very well directed episode, and they do take advantage of some of the classic tropes of horror, I guess, or at least of creepiness. But unfortunately, we do have to talk about some negatives, as is the way. So my sort of first one, and we'll go straight into it, because although I liked Martha as she was, I thought the jealousy was a bit overplayed. I just didn't like how kind of petty and schoolgirly she was over, oh, he doesn't love me. What am I supposed to do for another 2 weeks? Like, come on, just wait. You've got nothing else to do.
And she just snogged another guy in the previous episode,
right?
As well. Maybe swap it out a bit or something. I don't know.
Yeah. It's just a bit over the top, and I don't think that's Freema's fault. I reckon it's probably the writing's fault in that. So although I praised it, it lets itself down here. It just makes her too dramatic in an episode that doesn't need that relationship drama. And I think it's pretty much dropped next episode as well. You know, it's not really there after she gets to the hall. It's kind of dropped and then it's never mentioned again until the finale, her relationship. So you know, I just think it's just a bit much. Although I liked seeing the Doctor be like, hey, here are some rules, and I liked the fact that he didn't think he could like fall in love with anyone, and that didn't cross his mind. That is a good idea. But it's Martha's reaction to it being like, oh, why wasn't it me? Is kind of where I'm like, oh, you don't need that. No. It's a bit much. Again, as you mentioned, especially as she made out with someone literally probably 2 weeks ago in relation to this episode. So yeah, that's my only pick for Martha, and that's sort of why I don't think, although what she was good throughout, that lets it down too much for it to be a positive, I think.
Yeah.
So what is your first negative?
We need to talk about Tim.
Right.
He can just see things, and he just knows things. Sometimes I say things and they turn out to be correct. I hate that. I think it's lazy as fuck. And it's not just in Doctor Who, it's in anything when that's a thing. He's in Planet of the Dead as well, and I hate that. She's psychic just so they can do, it will knock 4 times. It's a story.
I think like
crowbarred in.
That's less acceptable. I think in this one, at least they give I don't think in this week, but at least overall they give an explanation. But in Planet of the Dead, I agree with you there.
I don't think they do though with Tim. I think he's just like that.
Maybe
from what I remember, that's how it is.
We'll find out.
If I'm wrong next week, we'll find out next week. But I don't think they properly say either way. But it's just because of that, I'm like, ugh. And it's done so that Martha has someone else who knows about the Doctor, so she has an eye in the next one, so he can do stuff with the watch so that he can take it because he's interested in it. So that just feels very lazy and crowbarred in any form. But you know, especially in a show like Doctor Who, they probably could have given an explanation for it, like you said, like tie it to the watch, and that like affects him for some reason. You'd have to explain why the watch chose him, of course. But even something like that, just explain it instead of just be like, I can say things and they're correct. Good for you, buddy. But yeah, for me, that just feels very crowbarred in, and it's just such a cheap way, I think, of getting that plot to happen.
Mhm.
So that's my real proper issue with the episode, really.
Yeah, fair enough. I've always thought it was the watch that was maybe calling out to him, and that's obviously why he picked it up. But maybe they don't explain it. But they don't this week, obviously.
It's the fact that he says, like, well, just sometimes I say things that tend to be correct, and that's before he's even encountered the watch. So I just feel like
so unless
he's just aware of that side of him. That's why he's like quiet and stuff.
Yeah, I agree, because it does then imply that this happens before he ever came to school. Yeah. Which I then agree is a bit ridiculous, and is not
which is, I think, why he's like the outsider weirdo.
Yeah, a bit weird.
He's just like that.
Yeah. But I do get that. I think I will hold off on my criticism until if they give an answer next week. But if they don't explain it, then I do agree that that it is a bit strange that he can just I can just do it. But I think Doctor Who doesn't have a habit.
If they give an answer, then I guess that's okay. But I also feel like give a reason in the episode that you introduced that idea, because otherwise I'm just like, no, I'm out.
That's fair enough. I completely agree. Sort of kind of tied to that, not really, is the I mean, it could, I mean, the fact that everything that we need to know about how Martha and the Doctor got in that situation is just a flashback. Martha walks into the TARDIS like, right, here we go. Pay attention. Here's how we got here. Here's your 2-minute flashback while Martha walks around the TARDIS slowly and unnecessarily.
Yeah.
I know they needed to tell us what happened, but they did that in the dream sequence, basically. Except for kind of explicitly, well, in the dream sequence, don't they say he needs to turn himself human? Or do they just stop?
I can't remember. I don't think so. Oh, he gets out the watch. He says, "This watch is," and then it cuts to John Smith.
Right. So, there are other ways to do it other than just, right, clearly we've forgotten to explain to the audience how this is working. So here's how it's going to work. Pay attention. Like maybe just, I mean, if they wanted to keep the fact that, or keep the mystery that maybe it is all a dream, they wouldn't have done the next time trailer spoiling that it wasn't. So just have the flashback sequence as your cold open and then cut to him waking up and whatever.
Yeah.
Do that rather than taking 5 minutes out of the episode just to have Martha slowly wander around the TARDIS while she remembers something that happened 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
But that's my only sort of one of my main criticisms is the fact that it's just so hastily and lazily delivered. It does feel like it was just inserted in there to be like, hey, here's what's going on.
Yeah.
And it's halfway through the episode as well. So at that point, you don't really care. You're too invested in what is going on. But it is what it is. And it doesn't help that right after that, Martha then gets jealous about the Doctor being with someone else. So I'm like, that whole scene is just unnecessary. Just take it all out. But yeah, that's one of Martha is sort of my only big negatives for this one. I do have a third, but it's kind of a meh. So what is your next negative?
Well, it kind of ties into that, I guess, in a sense. I do feel like, it's a part one. There's going to be a lot of setup and info dumping. I talked like the first 10 minutes is just like, this is this character, this is this character. And it's like we have to meet the Doctor all over again. And sometimes I can be like, okay, let's get to the family of blood bit. So I think, it's more than a lot of part ones I feel like we have covered. This one really does need the second part to actually properly be fully appreciated. So I guess that's a detriment to the episode in a way, because for me it doesn't quite stand on its own without the second part. Because I can get a lot more enjoyment out of like the Impossible Planet or something just as a part one. And I think they do try to break up that portion by including little flashes of him like becoming human and screaming at the camera. That must have been a bad day for David Tennant, just having to scream for like hours and hours.
Maybe it's the last scene of the series, so they didn't have to do anymore.
We just want you to scream for your last day, if you will. So I think they do try and break it up with that kind of thing, but it still does feel a bit like, okay, this is a lot, just so they can kind of get to the scarecrows and the family being possessed, because like it's nearly a third of the way in before the thing even crashes. So I'm like, let's just get with it. But again, I can kind of live with it because part two does exist.
Yeah, and the fact that like every time Tim like looks or touches the watch, like, oh hey, look, here's aliens. You remember these aliens? You remember that they go, they're
Yeah,
there. Oh,
yeah.
okay, thanks.
I did like, I did like some of like the little
Yeah,
tongue-in-cheek references to other stories, but that kind of thing I think was a bit much.
yeah. It does feel a bit like they're padding it out and being like, oh, we need something to happen. Yeah, do a quick 20-second montage. Done.
Yeah.
So sort of my last negative is I kind of feel the romance between the Doctor and Joan developed very quickly.
Yeah.
Because it's literally like, oh hey, I'm Joan, by the way. Oh, I'm John. Oh, okay. You want to go dancing? Yeah, let's make out. And that's it. That's it. It's done. There is some development there. I found it quite jarring when she was like, oh, I don't want to see kids using guns, and then sort of storms away, and then next scene they're like just casually walking through.
It reminds me of my husband being shot.
It's like, oh, now we need to give context to that. I know, let's have them be friendly with each other and just walk through a courtyard where she eventually falls in love with him in those scenes. Okay. I was like, oh, okay then. Yeah, it's literally, I assume this takes place on maybe it must be a Friday night, I guess, because I think the dance is on like the Friday or something.
Mm-hmm.
So it literally is like one day, maybe 2 days, and it's just a bit quick. I guess if maybe you can believe it in the fact that she's like the only woman of stature in the school, so maybe that's why they're thrown together, and he's the main character, so maybe that's why they're thrown together. But it's not like they're far away from a village, is it? So it's not like and they literally go to a pub, so it's obviously not like that there are only people around.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't dislike the romance. I'm not saying that I don't think they make a good couple and that their chemistry is not there and it doesn't work. It's just the only unrealistic part is how quick it happens. If we came in and there was already that romance there, if they take out that scene where they're like, oh, I'm Joan, by the way, if they just take that out and have it as they've always known and always sort of had something there, maybe that would make it a bit believable with how quick it sort of went. But it really does.
They do mention something like, oh, it's been 3 months since you arrived.
Yeah. And now I'm just
introducing myself
now. Yeah.
The groundwork was there to have them in a more advanced romantic stage than they did.
Yeah.
So
and I think
it was odd.
Yeah, that would have been better because it doesn't make sense to be at a school where there's only one matron and then only find out her name on the one night where she invites you to the dance. It feels a bit weird. But it's fine. I can get over it. It's only something I noticed this time because I was kind of looking and scratching around for nitpicks, and that was the only one that sort of stood out to me as a major thing.
Mm-hmm.
So what is your final negative?
My final main one, yeah. For me, I've always found the cliffhanger a bit
Interesting. Okay.
Only because we know they're both going to be fine.
But you can say that about every cliffhanger.
Yeah, and some cliffhangers are better than others in how they achieve that.
Yeah, all right.
Like the Daleks showing up in Army of Ghosts. They've established apparently that Rose is going to die. So like, oh shit, that really could happen. This, I just don't think the stakes are there. Maybe if this was like the final story of the series, I'd be like, oh shit.
Yeah.
But for me, it's just, I feel like it's a bit like, oh, we're building up to an ending. Oh, it's finished. That's how it feels to me. It's a bit of a sudden one, I guess. And I'm just like, oh no, he has to choose between this woman we've only met in this episode and his companion. Oh, they're both in so much danger. Oh dear, what's going to happen? I just don't. Again, some of that is obviously hindsight because we know what happens. We've seen the story, but I don't know. I feel like there could have been more to it, and based on like behind the scenes stuff, they struggled to decide what the cliffhanger was going to be.
Right. Yeah.
So I do feel like that kind of just shows that maybe it was just a bit of a damp squib. But again, my only real problem with the story is Tim's role in it thus far, so I can get over it. But I just think this probably would have been something better that they could have done.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I do quite like the cliffhanger purely because I don't think Martha kind of endears herself to the Doctor and Joan right before that. So you kind of do think that, oh shit, maybe he's going to be like, yeah, Martha can die. Because especially during that time period, she would have been seen as the least important person there. And she's just probably pissed him off quite a bit. So there is that, I guess. but it does feel like we got, oh my god, shit's about to get real, and stop.
Yeah.
Okay, and then wait till next week. But that is kind of the problem with cliffhangers overall, especially when it's a show.
Yeah, I think it would have been more interesting if he'd made a choice and then it ends, and then they have to kind of deal with the consequences of that when they get out of it in the next one. Yeah. I think that would have been quite.
But I mean, thinking ahead, I don't think there's necessarily. Don't think the cliffhanger ends in a good way anyway. So we'll come back to that. Maybe it's a bit.
Yeah, I think Martha just like, haha.
Yeah,
suckers.
Yeah. It's like, oh, okay.
Yes, escaped.
Yeah, literally.
Oh, so yeah, because Tim opens the watch, doesn't he?
That
and then Martha's like,
yeah. So it's not even them that do it. It's Tim that just snuck along.
Yeah, but I prefer that resolution to the cliffhanger than the cliffhanger itself, because at least they established like Tim's there and everything. So
yeah, I suppose that's fair enough. So I don't really have any other sort of negative points. So what other ones do you have?
The only other one, and again I can get over it, but I just feel like they built out like, oh, this is my true form, and they have Baines going and they have Jenny going and it's a cloud of gas.
Yeah.
Like, it just felt a bit like, it's a bit Galactus from Fantastic Four. It just felt a bit generic to me in the fact that it's just, this is my mother, it's a cheap orb, and then gas comes out of it. I would have preferred that just it have gone unseen. So like, shit, what does that thing look like? Kind of like the Midnight Monster.
Yeah.
Because they did that with Baines, they could have just done that again when Jenny gets possessed, but instead, it's like the sex, gas, and tortured. Just
yay,
possessed her.
That's what it is.
Yeah. So I just think because some of the design elements and stuff are so strong in this episode, that felt a bit like, you didn't really need to show that. But again, I can get over it because it's not like one of my main negatives.
Yeah, I've always remembered this as you never see the alien, and it's just always cut away. So my mind just blocks the fact that you see it or you see the gas, which is fine. I'm happy to live my life like that. I think it makes it makes it a bit easier for me.
I like living my life in
like even now, it's not on my negatives because I forgot. So
well, there you go.
So I'm happy with that. But yeah,
you're doing God's work.
Yeah, I do agree that it probably could have just been like a cutaway, but maybe they just didn't want to do that twice. I get it. But maybe they could do that cliche thing where the rest of the family crowd round her and it pulls away and she goes,
yeah, because they did that with the scarecrows, like two of them.
Yeah.
They did that with Jenny and the farmer guy.
Yeah, which is fair enough, understandable.
So I like that they changed it up when the scarecrow just grabs the little girl, flings it over his shoulder, and off we go.
Oh, love it. Have I got anything else? I don't think so. Yeah, Martha doesn't really make the right choices. She's kind of just she's very scattergun towards the end of the episode, trying to get the doctor back, I think. But she just sort of makes all the wrong choices. I like the when they're approaching the family approaching the little village hall. He's like, "Oh, spare a penny." He's like, "I didn't spare you," and just killed him. Like, whoa, hold on a minute.
Good. My favorite line was when John Smith draws Joan. And she points to Slovene and she's like, "Are you sure that's not?" I found that quite funny. I found that very endearing.
Oh, the Slovene.
Yeah. 10 out of 10 because it had a Slovene picture in it.
Yeah, literally. I put what a klutz Mr. Smith is because he falls down the stairs. Classic casual racism, which was lovely. And I always completely forget that that's in there, and it always takes me by surprise every time. But obviously it makes sense to be in there, and it does show the challenges that Martha is going through. I did put that Joan is a little bit of a bitch, because she's very she talks down a lot to Martha, I think. And again, I think that's probably because of the time period they're in more than anything else.
Definitely, yeah.
So I'm not really judging her too much on that, but it did kind of make me think, oh, you're not really that nice of a person.
Because they make her do that in the next episode as well.
Yeah, and I think
that's you can't be studying medicine.
Yeah,
a woman of your color.
Yeah,
and Martha's like, "Bitch, please, literally talk to the hand because I can name all the bones, bitch."
It's like, I don't believe you. Oh, okay then. Yeah,
that's in a book.
I just think that it's not. It's always maybe not like Joan as much, because if you think of Jenny, who kind of just sees past that. But it's because Jenny and Martha are kind of on the same social step, and
the fact that Joan comes to accept, like, oh, this guy I'm in love with is an alien. He's
Yeah.
disguised himself, and she can't accept that Martha studies medicine.
Yeah. Politics.
Politics.
In our Doctor Who. Unbelievable.
Idiot.
Yeah, I think that's about it, really. Cliche UFO landing. I don't know why they did like the weird like green searchlight when Joan's there, just so she'd be like, oh, what's that? That didn't make much sense to me, but I guess I don't know. I don't know why they guessed it didn't need to be in there. Maybe they just wanted to pad it out. Who knows?
Maybe.
Yeah, and I just really like the journal aspect of things. And I do have that somewhere because they released it as a toy.
Yeah, me too.
And the watch, didn't they? There was a little duo, and I did quite like it. I just wish it was made as a proper book. But hey, in theory, it's all the episodes.
It's probably on Etsy somewhere,
or almost definitely. But then even
like 200 quid.
even the toy, you couldn't really read what was there. I was like, oh, just show the pictures then. Yeah, I guess that's sort of it for our positives and negatives, which brings us onto your fun facts.
Indeed, it does.
Oh boy.
Some very, very long fun facts I found this week when I was writing them out. I was like, geez. But still, that's fine.
Lovely.
Anyway, this is kind of the obvious one that we've talked about, but this is based on a novel of the same name by the author Paul Cornell, who also was brought on board to write this adaptation. That was about the Seventh Doctor. There's a few big changes as well from the novel to this, which we can talk about in future fun facts.
Lovely.
And this is another kind of famous one, I'd say, but John Smith's parents being called Sydney and Verity is an in-joke reference to Sidney Newman, the original creator of Doctor Who, and Verity Lambert, the first showrunner and producer. The BBC logo didn't appear on screen, which it usually does during the cold open or the opening titles. So why that didn't happen in this one, I don't know, but there you go. Sets up the Communion Arch to reappear in Utopia, which is
and in fun. Fugitive of the Jadoon.
Yeah, and the Next Doctor, even though that one's fake, but still. The sketches in the Journal of Impossible Things marks the first visual acknowledgement in the revived series of any previous incarnations predating the Ninth Doctor. So there you go. People were still up in the air, like, is this actually a continuation? I know you've had Sarah Jane, but this is like, listen, Paul McGann is on this.
Yay!
So listen to us. And he was like the biggest face on there. Like, see, it's canon. So that shut up that was of the movie, I guess.
Yeah.
In a deleted scene based on the original novel, one of the Doctor's instructions for Martha is to not let him eat pears. The Doctor's distaste for pears does survive into other stories, such as Hellbent and Twice Upon a Time, and the novel The Taking of Chelsea 426.
Yeah,
Cornell references that scene in his novelization of Twice Upon a Time, because he did the novelization of that, which is fun. The Doctor's full list of instructions for Martha is presented as a deleted scene on the DVD. During the unheard requests in the episode, David Tennant breaks the fourth wall, mentioning his love of the House Martins and spouting nonsense to pad out the time before he returns to character for the final little instruction.
Watching that deleted scene is great.
It is very, very good. I'd have a lot of fun doing something like that. The original story had the receptacle for the Doctor's identity be a cricket ball. It was changed to a pocket watch because they wanted something that could actually be like opened to like visually show something being let out. But they did include the cricket ball as like a haha.
Yeah.
So there you go. Scarecrows were added, as was Two Davies wanted a traditional monster for the story. Get that merch, baby. I remember the Froobs had a scarecrow one. So,
yes. Oh, the Froobs. What a
classic
throwback.
Froobs. I know, right? Oh, I saw doing some research the other day, and do you remember the Doctor Who pasta? The shaped pasta.
Yeah.
Oh. I was like, oh my god,
what a time to be alive.
What a time. I had so much of that shit. So the original novel actually had different villains called the Orbitides, I think is how you pronounce them. He tried to make them work in the televised story, where they are beings where their clothes and possessions are actually all extensions of their own form. So the little girl has a sentient red balloon that attacks people. It was decided that it worked better in prose rather than TV, so they made the family of Blood instead, which I think was probably a wise move. So I don't know if a sentient balloon would have really worked, but they kept the balloon in as like a wink, wink, nod, nod to the book.
Okay.
The little girl's surname was originally Wainwright, but it was changed as Blink, which had already been written, featured a character with the same surname.
It's
this happening
is like the
again.
second time.
I know. Like, there are lots of surnames, and yet they still somehow do this.
And it's like in one series. It's not even like
I know.
2 series.
It's really funny. It is stated in the story that John Smith is brought up in Nottingham to reflect David Tennant's desire to continue using his English accent in the story.
Yeah.
Martha's family originally played a part in the story, but that was gotten rid of very, very early on. I don't know how that would have worked, but there you go. The cliffhanger originally focused on John Smith having to decide whether or not to have the schoolboys open fire on the family blood. So while I'm still not huge on the cliffhanger we did get, I do prefer that to this one.
Yeah.
That we would have gone, so that's good. This was an interesting one that I didn't know. The fob watch was originally seen in early series 1 episodes as a knob on the TARDIS console. So there you go.
Sure, I'll take you.
Apparently, you can see Chris Eccleston using it in The End of the World at the start when he's like doing all those creepy movements, staring Rose down.
Oh, right, yeah.
The girl's red balloon is a significant plot point in the novel, but it was left out of the TV version, but retained as like a little detail. And then wink, wink, nod, nod. And then this is horrible for our last fun fact.
Amazing.
The family were intended to have technology that was organically based, and this carried through to their guns. So this is a thing with these guns. There was a creature inside each gun. Pulling the trigger resulted in a jab to the creature, which would then scream. This scream is the sound of the disintegration beam. So when they fire their gun, it's actually a creature inside the gun screaming.
Oh,
so there you go.
I like that idea.
I really like that.
Very dark.
I think it's cool. Yeah, I really like that.
It plays in quite well, and it does also explain why the gun looks like some slug thing as well. I've always thought it looks like a weird creature.
Yeah, so I thought that was really cool. And I kind of wish I'd mentioned it in the episode, but there's just not time.
And the thing is, though, we won't get a Target novelization of this because a novelization already exists. So
good God,
it's unlikely we'll even get one.
The meta. A novelization of a previous novelization.
A book of an episode based on a book, which would be amazing. But I don't think that'll ever happen again because it already exists. Very fun facts. And that brings us on to the last agenda item. Ratings.
Yes.
What are you rating part 1?
I'm going for 8.5. Definitely my favorite
interesting. So far. Okay. Mine is an 8.
Mm-hmm. I was torn between 8 and 8.5.
Yeah, mine was.
I decided to be kind.
Yeah. I went 7.5 or 8. I've gone for 8. Because I do think this is probably one of the best episodes so far. Let's see if I can find out what I did. Smith and Jones, that was a 7.5 or a 7.
Yeah, because I gave Smith and Jones an 8, and I think I just preferred this one, which is why I gave it the 0.5.
Yeah, which is effectively the same for mine. And hopefully that means that next week, with the resolutions and everything, will be even better. Because next week is obviously part 2, Family of Blood, simply titled part 2. And what are your sort of memories of it? Do you remember it being a good part 2?
I hope so. Again, my thoughts mean nothing after 42. So I think it's fairly safe to say it's very well regarded, this story in the fandom. I think it's a very emotional conclusion at times. With David Tennant's performance and the last scene. It's like the remembrance service and stuff. I'm like. I do think it's a good conclusion. It's nice to see a lot more of the family actually being evil and mean and stuff like that. Outside of that, I can't really remember how they fill 45 minutes, so I'm looking forward to seeing exactly what goes down. And then obviously there's the big kind of dark moment for the Doctor when he punishes the family at the end, which I love. So that's probably going to be my positive, one of them. Spoilers. But I think it should be a nice conclusion to it. I'm excited to check it out because it has been a while since I've seen any of these, and it was just good to have an enjoyable episode of series 3, which we haven't had in a while. I
was coming to this, I'm so excited to watch some good episodes finally. And hopefully next week will be just as good. I do remember obviously David Tennant's performance is a standout, and the flashback flash forward scene for the life that him and Joan could have. I think it was going to add some quite emotional beats to it. I think it's a bit more action-packed as well. and it'll be sort of non-stop. But it'll be interesting to see how it goes. It could fly by. It could be the fact that we get there and it's like, oh, there's a lot of padding in this, which I'm hoping there won't be. But from what I remember, everything gets sort of solved pretty comprehensively, I'd say. Even though when we flash forwards, or come to the future with old Tim Latimer, he's probably dead now. If we think about, because it's World War One, isn't it? So when this came out, he was probably pushing 90 plus.
Oh god, yeah, he would have been. Yeah.
So because that would have been 2008. Wow. Set 2000. Well, I mean, it might not. For all we know, they could have gone to Remembrance Service. It was 2001. But
that's true. Yeah.
So yeah. But we'll see how it goes. I do remember liking it a fair bit. But that is it. We should be back next week. We probably won't be back sooner, but we could be, because there was surprise Doctor Who news last weekend. So who knows? There could be a surprise.
What's that?
Oh no, it's nothing. Just they announced a new writer. I think it's this guy called Russell. Hasn't really done much else, I don't think.
Nah, never heard of him.
But there could be a Series 13 trailer. We say that every week, but it will be the start of October next weekend.
Well, I saw someone on Twitter, because that Vigil thing's finished now.
Yes.
And they've announced their next Sunday night drama is going for 4 weeks. So the next free slot would be Halloween.
Right.
So maybe it's going to be a Halloween night Doctor Who premiere, maybe.
We discuss this. We don't get.
We'll see. No, can't believe it. Make it happen, Russell.
He tried once. Although we're getting close to Halloween Doctor Who with Blink coming up in a couple of weeks. So
yeah, that's quite well timed.
But yeah, so there might be Doctor Who news this weekend. But normally, what BBC do it for their dramas is they'll put a trailer out sort of 2 weeks before it starts, or a month before. It might be coming soon, and then 2 weeks we'll get in 2 weeks time type thing. Yeah. So if we do get anything, I imagine it'll be a trailer that just says coming October, coming November, wherever it is, because it's getting quite close to the end of the year now.
It will be the bare minimum.
yeah, it will be. It will be. Either way, we'll definitely be back for more reviewing. It could just be that we're back before that, but if not, we will definitely see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.